this book much better than Laura did.
Well, I liked it. I did. I just wasn't like, I feel like, and Natalie like wants to have this book's children, and I'm like okay with not having its children. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Did you see my non-spoiler review?
No,
I said in it that I wanted to marry it.
See?
We're doing a spoilery discussion on Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo, so if you have not read the book, or if you
don't like spoiler reviews.
Exactly, don't watch this.
Yep, stop here.
Yeah, go watch my non-spoiler review. I will link it right on Laura's face. Click on Laura's
just mean.
Click on Laura's face to go.
But kind of awesome.
Yeah.
This is the link right here.
Yeah. I'll also link it down below if you're watching this on your phone or something. Also, if you don't want to be spoiled, don't read the comments, because I would assume people would want to write spoilery comments on a spoilery video. And also, if you haven't read it but you like spoilers, then feel free to watch, but you know, you've been warned. I'll start with telling the story. I think that'll get us into it a little bit. So I finished reading this before she did. But as I was reading it, and she was still only on like page 80, and I was on like page like 150, and I was like, Laura, read this book, it's so good! I even sent her this text message. I'm going to show a little picture because I like it, and I tweeted it to Leigh Bardugo and she replied. So I was hyping it up for her, very muchly. And then she was like, so I'm reading it and it's good, but it's also meh. And I was like, what? What? And she was like, also, I still hate Kaz. He's a douchebag.
He is
and I was like, he is a douche, but things happen in the story that make you like feel bad for him, and he's not as much of a douche anymore. And then she was like, oh, and also, like, it's ridiculous because Pekka Rollins didn't actually kill his brother. And I was like, that's true, no, he didn't. But he was 9, and I can see how the order of events would make him blame Pekka Rollins for it, especially because he was only 9. Yeah. And I was like, and also, have you read more than that? And she was like, his brother died. And I was like, okay, but you haven't read further yet. And she was like, no, because I wasn't wanting to spoil her. And so I was like, okay, well, more stuff will happen that will make you feel bad for Kaz. Like, more stuff's gonna happen, so you just wait. And she was like, alright. And then we were talking more about the story, and then she just said, in passing, about when he brought Geordie's body back to shore, and I was like, wait a second, hold up, you read that part? And she was like, yeah? And I was like, so you read where Kaz was buried under a pile of corpses and used his brother's dead body as a floaty, and you're still meh? And she was like, yeah? I was like, Laura!
This makes me sound like a terrible person. I'm just like, whatever, people use their brothers for floaties all the time. Like, no big deal. No, it wasn't that. Like, it's a very good story. I don't know, I just wasn't, like, totally... like, there are some books that I read, and like right from the beginning I'm like totally drawn in, and I'm like, I can't get enough of it. It's a really good story and I really enjoyed it, but I don't know, it just didn't draw me in like some books have, so it was...
Which is totally allowed.
Yeah.
There's nothing
like,
wrong with that.
But
see, for me, and this is my thing with books, and it didn't draw me in from the beginning because I was frustrated as hell in the beginning because I had no idea what they were talking about. And I was like, oh, why did I decide to read this book? For me, what I really liked about it was, first, the characters I thought were super deep, which is funny because Laura was like, meh, to the characters.
I felt like toward the end of the book, from the part when they broke the kid out of the laboratory, and then were escaping with him, I felt like from that point on I was like really hooked and really excited, but that was like closer toward the end of the book.
To the end, yeah.
But I was really pleased with how it ended, and by the end of it I was like, oh wow, that was really good, like I really liked it. So it wasn't like I was like, at the end I was just like, yeah, and then like threw it on my coffee table.
She didn't think it was stupid or anything, she just didn't want to marry it like I did.
Yeah, it's true.
So yeah, well, I loved the characters from the beginning. Like, even when I was frustrated, I liked the characters. Like, I liked Inej, and I liked
Inej. She was my favorite.
Matthias or Matthias. Let's call him Matt for now.
Okay.
No, Matthias. So I liked him from the very start. Like, when I like felt bad for him at first because, well, first the whole thing where he had to like kill the wolves, and wolves are all like sacred to him and everything, and I was all like, oh no, that's so horrible, but he has to do it so he gets better conditions in his jail cell that apparently he doesn't deserve. And then whenever Nina was all like, oh, we're here to save you and everything, and I was all like, hooray, you were rescued, and then he was all like, I'm gonna kill you, bitch, and I was like, oh, why?
That was
like,
pretty exciting.
I was completely drawn in, and I was like, why does he want to kill her? There has to be a good reason for it.
I did like, in general, like, Matthias and Nina's story, but also the others. Like, the backstories were really interesting.
They were. And Matthias and Nina's were my favorite. And because I liked that he was like, I don't know, he was like this jerk, but at the same time was like, I shouldn't be a jerk. Like, I don't know, it was weird, because he was brought up to believe that the Grishas were, like, less than human, but he's the one who brought them water, because he was all like, well, I feel bad for them.
Yeah, I feel like it was a pretty, I don't know, like, he was just believable as a character in the sense that he was somebody who was brought up to believe one thing, but kind of, like, slowly was figuring out that it was not right.
Yes, and the part that I really liked, and it made me almost cry, I don't think I cried in the book, but I almost cried, whenever they found the Grishas and they killed the one because he was all, like, suffering and dying, and then she was all freaking out because they had to bury them, and they were like, we don't have time, and Matthias was like, I'll stay and bury them with you, and he explained how, like, the reason they bury Frigerdans or whatever they're called.
Fjordans, I think.
Oh!
Well, J's are pronounced as Y's when they're in that.
That kind of, how do you know where they are? It's in a magical world.
I don't know why I know that.
But that's awesome. I just, in my head, was pronouncing it for Jordan, but I knew that was wrong.
It's Fjorda, I think.
Oh, well, see, look, Laura rocks. And why the Fjordans, is that how you say it?
I think so.
Bury each other, get buried is because they, like, go with, like, the roots of the trees and all that kind of stuff, and that's why they burn Grishas, because Grishas are less than human, and they're not worthy of being in their ground and with their trees.
Part of their land.
Yeah. And he helped her bury them anyway, because he knew it was important to her, and it's just...
And it was nice because it's like the whole time he was like totally like resisting that he was completely in love with her.
Yeah.
And he was like, damn it, no I'm not, crap I am. Like he was just really like conflicted.
I think so
did
too.
really
I
like
it was my favorite. And I loved whenever they were like, when she was keeping him warm and stuff, and she said something about like his boner in the morning, and he was like, why do you say things like that? And I was like, ah, you're so cute. Yeah. So yeah, the characters were so real to me. And I was thinking about them when I wasn't reading it, and I was like, that to me, like, that's what makes me love a book so much, is when I'm thinking about the characters when I'm not reading the book, and also the world. Like, even though the world is not a nice place, or at least these people's experience of the world is not a nice place, just the magic and the way people interacted with each other, and the way things happened, and how it kind of made it seem real, and just the way they talked about how some people treat Grishas and how other people treat Grishas and stuff, made it seem like when I was reading the book, I was in that world. And I didn't want to stop reading the book because I didn't want the world to stop. That's what makes me love a book.
Yes.
When I
totally agree. Like, good books, you never stop thinking about them the whole time that you're reading it, and then usually afterward as well.
I also totally knew from the very beginning that they weren't getting their money. Like, very beginning, whenever the guy was talking to Kaz, and I was like, he's not giving his money. He doesn't want to save the world from this drug. He wants it for himself. Like, of course he wants it. Like, why wouldn't he? Like, I can totally... So I was not surprised at all whenever he was like, you're not getting the money.
I was going to say, I didn't know that was going to happen, but I wasn't surprised when it happened. Like, it didn't really occur to me, but then when it happened, I was like, right.
Yeah, of course. Of course people do that.
I wasn't like, oh my god!
I was surprised, though, when it wasn't actually the prisoner's son. I can't remember either of their names. But it was actually Wylan in disguise. And I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. And when the boat blew up, I was like, no! But then they were all safe, and they were all, I forget where they went, somewhere.
To some place.
Yeah.
Where they were safe.
Also... Did you see how much Jesper totally wanted Wylan?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, okay,
totally.
good.
It was like kind of subtle, but kind of not at the same time.
Yeah.
Like I was kind of like, I wonder if that's what that's about.
Yeah.
So I wasn't like sure, but it's interesting that you picked up the same thing.
Yeah,
so,
okay. Haha, I liked that. They must get together in the next book, or kiss at least. Something has to happen with them.
Totally. And it's awesome too because Jesper's always like hardcore making fun of Wylan.
Yeah, but it's because he loves him.
It's because he loves him.
He wants him. Yeah.
Totally.
I'm not religious in any way, shape, or form. But for some reason, I really liked that they said saints in it instead of like God or Jesus. Like they used it as a swear word, they used it as people to pray to, they used it like, and I just liked that for some reason. It's different and cool, and like that, like Inej would be like, oh, the right saints were watching out for her and stuff, which is instead of being like, oh, God was watching out for her, which is like the same thing, but different. I liked it. I don't know. It was cool. And then I liked that they'd use saints instead of saying like Jesus Christ when they were swearing.
How did you feel about the ending with, like, how it's just like, haha, and I'm stealing your girlfriend, goodbye!
Well, I liked that Kaz was super, like, upset about it, because it showed that he's not
He's finally,
a
like,
total
caring.
jerk.
Yeah.
Like, he's actually gonna show that he loves her, and hopefully he will touch her. Not necessarily sexually, but that should happen too. But that, like, I liked, well, yeah.
I was kind of annoyed by that. Like, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, and obviously it's gonna, like, lead into the next book and everything, but I was kind of like, they're like, we're here to do the deal, and then the merchant guy is like, haha, I've double-crossed you, and then they're like, oh no, and then he's like, by the way, I'm taking an edge, and then he just, like, they, like, flew away with her, and she was gone.
Well, because
and
he
I was kind of like, come on, like,
But
frick.
it was because he noticed how he looked at
Yeah.
her. So he was like, oh, he cares about her, we need her.
Yeah.
Because he's not gonna, he'll do what we say if we have her.
Yeah.
Which was good,
I
but
know.
it
was one of those things, I guess, because it was right at the end of the book, and I was like, even though I knew there was a sequel, I was expecting things to be, like, wrapped up, so maybe it's just that I'm pissed off that there's a cliffhanger and I have to wait to find out what happens. Maybe that's all it is. Like, you know, things are, like, kind of generally wrapped up, and then it's, like a separate story in the next one, is what I was expecting.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I was kind of like, oh, so close to the end. Oh, here they go to make their deal. Like, everything's gonna, like, you know. And then it was just like, oh.
And see what's funny too, when I was like a good chunk of the way into this, but not quite half maybe, I thought, because they hadn't, like, gotten there yet or anything, so I thought the first book was going to be them getting their way to do the heist, and the second book was going to be the heist. That's what I thought for a long time. Yeah. But that didn't happen. But I feel like the next book is going to be all, like, heist style still. Because they'll have to, like, break into places together and be all secretive and stuff.
And I kind of like at the end that, although one thing I didn't understand was that it kind of implies at one part in the book when they're making their way through the ice court, Kaz goes to find Pekka Rollins, who he blames for killing his brother. He finds Pekka, and then he breaks into the cell, and then it kind of, like, skips to the next chapter, and then the next time you see Kaz, he's just running down a hallway with a shirt covered in blood.
Yeah.
And so you assume that he killed Pekka Rollins, and he's like, oh, I ran into somebody, and they're all like,
Oh,
sure.
Really yeah, but that's really what happened.
But he didn't kill Pekka Rollins.
No.
Because, so at the end, Pekka Rollins was still alive.
Yeah.
And Kaz went to him and sold, I think, his shares in the Crow Club.
Yeah.
To get money to go save an edge. But it was just interesting, and I feel like he's using Pekka Rollins and he's going to get his revenge later. But I just thought it was kind of, like, where did the blood on his shirt come from if he didn't kill Pekka?
Because he killed guards, probably. When he said I ran into some guards. He wasn't
Yes.
lying.
Huh, weird.
They just made us think
he was lying.
he was lying. Yeah. Oh, you know what part I liked, which makes me seem evil, I guess? Or not really evil, but, like, violent? Whenever he ripped that guy's eye out. I was like, whoa!
For word, I was kind of like, Kaz, jeez.
Yeah. Well, I was too, but I still was like, Frankie's crazy! And cool, and gross, and...
Gross.
Yeah. And then I like that Wyland was all like, you said you wouldn't kill him, and you killed him anyway! He gave you the information! Shut up, Wyland.
I feel like in that situation I probably would have been Wyland, like, why?
I'm also interested, I feel like there's a reason why Wyland didn't have any chapters.
Oh, I never even noticed.
Oh, I knew it. The whole way I was like, Wyland hasn't had a chapter yet. He hasn't had a chapter yet, and he never had a chapter.
I totally
And I wonder if
noticed
he'll
that.
have any in the second book.
But everybody else did,
Everyone
right?
else did. Yep. So
Huh.
there were only 5 different perspectives.
That totally never occurred to me.
Elizabeth said that she thinks he doesn't have any chapters because he can't read.
Oh.
I think he's
But
dead.
I'm hoping he doesn't have any chapters because there's something about him that we're not supposed to know
He's
until
probably
later.
dead already.
No.
Yep. He's totally dead. Spoiler alert!
After they took down the sacred ash or whatever, the tree, and then jumped under it, and when they were holding their breath under the, like, going under the river on their way out, just the thoughts that were running through Kaz's mind, and it's funny, I can't even, like, really recall any of them specifically.
I don't even
But
either,
I don't know, I just really liked it. I think it's also interesting that the voice of God was actually the river running under the tree.
Oh, yeah.
And he was like, ha.
And that whenever you have to, if you're sacred enough to, like, cross the river or whatever, it's actually someone telling you how to do it.
Yeah, right? Yeah, totally. They're like,
But you're not
by the
supposed to-
way, we like you.
Yeah, so this is how you do it.
So yeah,
Don't tell anyone we told you.
Bright flashes of memory sparked through Kaz's mind. a cup of hot chocolate in his mittened hands, Geordie warning him to let it cool. The first time he'd seen Inej at the menagerie, in purple silk, her eyes lined with chest grew. I'm stronger than this, he told himself. My will is greater. But he could hear Geordie laugh. But all he could think of was Inej. She had to live. She had to have made it out of the ice court, and if she had, he'd begun to lean on her, to look for her, and to need her. He needed to thank her for his new hat.
Yes! Yes! I love that.
He talks about how he's, like, not so broken that he can't pull himself together for her a little bit. I don't know, I thought it was nice.
I also really liked the part where Kaz fainted.
Yes. And then Inej woke him up.
Yeah, and that was the part that made Kaz feel really real to me.
It totally made him feel more human.
And you know why he fainted? Because it reminded him of being buried under corpses.
No, that was a really good part and that part actually made me feel worse for Kaz than the story of the corpses. I don't know why, because I guess it was like, because now how much it had affected him.
Yeah, and now he's this guy who's supposed to be like super strong and in charge of everyone and knows he's doing badass guy, and
he worked so hard to like create this image for himself and to kind of like, and I think it's partly about convincing himself too that he has power. Like it's not just about convincing everyone else. It's kind of like he does it because he doesn't want to feel like that little boy that had all those terrible things happen to him. It did make him feel more human. Yeah. Or less, I don't know, it was like you could relate to him a little bit more because he wasn't just like, you know, big acting tough guy.
Who cuts people's eyes out.
Right?
Yeah.
And he slits the bottom of a kid's feet so that he can get a job.
Oh, I remember that, because I remember when we were first talking about that, she didn't like that what he did to get a job after Geordie died and he slit the kid's feet or whatever so he couldn't go into work. And I was like, well, yeah, that was douchey. And I didn't really have anything to say about it, but and now I do, so I'm going to say,
okay,
that he probably knew it was douchey and a bad thing to do, and now this kid doesn't have a job. But he needed a job.
Yeah.
And he needed to live, and if he didn't have a job, he would have died.
Yeah, it was survival.
It
was either do this to this kid or I die.
Yeah.
So, yeah. No, I was actually, I was thinking about that this morning for some reason. I don't know why it was in my head, but I was thinking about it and I was like, yeah, like, I'm not sure that I would have been able to do it, but I guess that just kind of shows like his strength of character that he was able to do it.
And what I really liked, I think my favorite parts were right after the boat blew up and Inej got stabbed and it had like all the memories from her little kid, just climb higher, keep climbing, keep climbing. And she was trying to get away, and then Kaz saved her, and then he was being a jerk because he said that he saved her because she's a valuable asset or something, and then she was like, I'm glad I'm bleeding all over your shirt. The other part that I liked when they kept saying, what did they say, no funerals?
No funerals, no mourners, no funerals.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I liked it. I also liked it because it was just like their thing.
It's kind of like break a leg.
Yeah. I hope that Nina is not magically over her addiction to the Judah Param in the second book. Like, I hope it's like a big struggle for her throughout the story and that's like part of the story. Otherwise that's way too easy.
I agree.
I don't want it to kill her, I want her to get over it, but I want it to take her like the whole book. and that Matthias will be there for her and he'll try and help her through it. And anyway, leave your spoilery comments down below. Bye!